So recently George R.R. Martin had an interview in which he stated he wasn't kept up to date by the final seasons of the show. By season 5 and 6 and certainly 7 and 8, I was pretty much out of loop, he revealed. Which makes so much sense to me because season 5 and 6 were the seasons where in my opinion everything started to fall apart. But that's the story of another day. So before we start this video, let me make something clear. Whatever happened in season 6, 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones is not valid to me. So we're not sure if Arya is really the one who kills the Night King or the catspaw dagger is the one that's used to do so. One of the reasons being the Night King was created just for the TV show and doesn't exist in the books. Yeah, you heard it right. So to find out what really happened in the Long Night, we have to wait until George R.R. Martin finishes the book. But for now, and just for the sake of this video, we're gonna accept all the bullshit and assume it all happened. So whenever you saw this BS sign in the corner of the screen, it means this scene belongs to one of the last 3 seasons of the show and it's bullshit. As you saw on the thumbnail, this video is dedicated to the Valyrian steel dagger known as the catspaw dagger, which was first introduced during an assassination attempt on Bran Stark in the first season of Game of Thrones. The dagger somehow began the War of the Five Kings and years later ended the Great War. And now it seems in the past also it started another civil war between Targaryens, as we saw in the trailer of House of the Dragon. In the first trailer of House of the Dragon, we witnessed the dagger in the possession of Viserys Targaryen. It's therefore entirely plausible that the dagger which came into Littlefinger's possession once belonged to a Targaryen prince. Fingers crossed that this show will actually tell us where this dagger came from and what it was made for in the first place. Unfortunately, in Game of Thrones, the show was not faithful to the books, and there's wrong information in the TV show that doesn't really match with all the clues we get from the book, especially in the trial of Lord Baelish. But before we get to the book, let's review all the informations and clues the show gave us about the dagger. Okay, enough for that, we don't have time. In the first season, the dagger was carried by the assassin who attempted to kill Bran. Following the incident, Catelyn showed the dagger to Maester Luwin, Ser Roderick Castle, Robb Stark and Theon Greyjoy. Catelyn decided to take the dagger to King's Landing to show it to Ned Stark. Varys and Littlefinger both examined the blade, to which Littlefinger claimed that the dagger belonged to him.
It's mine.
Yours?
I lost this dagger.
To whom?
Tyrion Lannister.
After Tyrion was kidnapped, he denied that, but Catelyn didn't really believe him. Afterward, Ned kept the blade with him, and during a conversation with Lord Baelish, Ned said, "With the people who tried to murder my boy," and put the dagger on the desk to make a point. And it seems after the incidents of the first season, Lord Baelish took the blade for himself, but it wasn't the dagger he held to Ned Stark's throat in the TV show. After that, the writers, D&D, kind of forgot about the dagger ever existed until season 7.
He kind of forgot about.
Although the dagger had not been seen in the series since season 1, the cover of the June 2017 issue of Entertainment Weekly showed Arya Stark with the dagger on her belt. This was somewhat of a spoiler that the dagger would reappear in the TV series. In season 7, at the Citadel, Sam studied a book about the Long Night. While reading, Sam lingered a page detailing the use of dragon glass to decorate weapons. The page contains a drawing of a Valyrian steel dagger which is the same catspaw dagger, and actor John Bradley explained in an interview in the premiere of season 7, when Sam is reading a book, he was specifically introduced to a linger on a detailed sketch of the Valyrian steel dagger, as this was apparently intended to remind the audience about it. When we were shooting that scene, I was literally told, make sure that you linger on this page. They were shooting over my shoulder and said, make sure to linger on this page. Make sure we get a good shot of it before you turn the page over. Littlefinger later gave the dagger to Bran, and Bran, however, was the three-eyed raven by then, incapable of fighting on his own. So he also gave the dagger to Arya in the presence of Sansa, and Sansa noted that Littlefinger never gives away anything for free. Later, Arya used the dagger when practicing with Brienne, and later the blade was used by Arya to execute Littlefinger during his trial for treason. And during the trial, it's deduced that the dagger did in fact belong to Lord Baelish all along, leaving open the possibility that he was the one who sent the catspaw assassin to kill Bran in the first place. It seems the writers kind of forgot that when the catspaw attempted to kill Bran, Lord Baelish was miles away from Winterfell. Or maybe Gendry ran all the King's Road from Winterfell to King's Landing to inform him of the incidents and ran all the way back to Winterfell to give Littlefinger's orders to the catspaw. Who knows? The execution of Lord Baelish is not the topic of this video, and although it made the majority of fans happy, my reaction to that was kinda like this lady. Because I knew that the fate of the TV show is gonna end up exactly like the fate of Littlefinger. But in the books, we have reliable clues about who the dagger belongs to and who sent the catspaw, which we will get to in a minute. In season 8, Arya used the Valyrian steel dagger to kill the Night King. And at the end of the show, the dagger was last seen at Arya's side as her ship sailed west into the unknown waters of the Sunset Sea. Now that we're done with the bullshit, let's get to the books. In the novels, in the other hand, the dagger originally belongs to Lord Baelish. During the tourney held to celebrate Joffrey Baratheon's 12th name day, Littlefinger lost it to Robert Baratheon and not Tyrion. In the first book, A Game of Thrones, chapter 14, similarly to the show, a catspaw sets a fire and tries to assassinate Bran Stark. Catelyn fends out the assassin and the direwolf Summer kills the catspaw. In chapter 18, again similarly to the show, believing that House Lannister is to blame, Catelyn and Sir Rodrik Castle travel to King's Landing with the knife to inform Lord Stark. Rodrik first discusses the dagger with Sir Aron Santagar, the master at arms of the Red Keep, through which Lord Varys realizes Catelyn is in the capital. Varys informs Lord Peter Baelish, who has Catelyn summoned to them. Then Peter reveals that he had once owned the blade, but he lost it to Tyrion Lannister during the tourney on Prince Joffrey's name day, when Sir Loras Tyrell defeated Sir Jaime Lannister, which means Tyrion's bet was on Sir Loras and Peter's bet was on Sir Jaime, which is not true because Tyrion never bets against his brother. In chapter 20, when Peter and Catelyn discuss the dagger with Eddard, Peter tells them the dagger alone is not enough to prove House Lannister was behind the assassination attempt and advises Eddard to get rid of the dagger, but Eddard keeps the blade. Later on, again similarly to the show, Tyrion is taken prisoner by Catelyn at the Crossroads Inn and brought to the Eyrie, where he wins a trial by combat. But throughout the way, Tyrion and Catelyn have different discussions about the dagger. In chapter 31, Tyrion says that the dagger is not his, and even if it was his dagger, why would he send a catspaw with his own blade to do an assassination? And then in chapter 38, we have thoughts of Tyrion about who sent the catspaw to kill Bran. In chapter 42, Tyrion insists to Catelyn and Bronn that he never owned the dagger and that he would always bet on Jaime during a tourney, never against him, which I mentioned earlier. And in chapter 47, when King Robert returns wounded, Eddard sheaths the Valyrian dagger at his waist. Peter suggests to Eddard that they should gather support to seize Robert's children as Robert lies dying, to give them control over kingdom. Eddard reminds Peter of the men the Lannisters have killed and shows him the dagger used in the attempt on Bran's life. In chapter 49, after the death of King Robert, Cersei gains the support of Peter, Janis, and his gold cloaks. When Eddard confronts Cersei in the throne room, Peter takes the dagger Eddard wears and shoves it under his chin. So yes, in the books, the dagger Lord Baelish holds to Ned's throat is exactly the same catspaw dagger. But then in the second book, A Clash of Kings, the dagger was mentioned many times again. In chapter 17, Tyrion Lannister, the acting hand of the king for Joffrey Baratheon, desires to confront Peter Baelish about the dagger. At some point, Peter waits for Tyrion in his chamber at the Tower of the Hand, where he offers the dagger to Tyrion as a gift, and Tyrion declines, and realizes that Peter is aware of the fact that Tyrion knows of his lie to House Stark. In chapter 25, when Peter Baelish berates Tyrion about being lied to and tells him to leave him out of his deceptions in the future, Tyrion thinks he will, only if it's mutual, noticing Peter bearing the dagger attached at his hip. In chapter 55, in Riverron's dungeon, Sir Jaime Lannister admits to having flung Bran Stark from the first keep of Winterfell, but denies Catelyn's accusation. He later hired a catspaw to kill Bran. Jaime also insists that Tyrion would never have bet against him during Joffrey's tourney. And here, Jaime actually mentions that it was Robert Baratheon who won the dagger, not Tyrion. In the next book, A Storm of Swords, in chapter 59, Tyrion actually tries to tease Joffrey and tell him he knows it was Joffrey who sent the catspaw. Similarly to the show, after receiving a Valyrian steel sword from Tywin as a wedding gift, King Joffrey claims he is no stranger to Valyrian steel, which is the biggest clue we have that it was Joffrey who used the Valyrian steel dagger in the past. In chapter 60, Tyrion later concludes that Joffrey was behind the assassination attempt on Bran Stark. And in chapter 68, the dagger is once again mentioned in the possession of Lord Baelish, which he uses to cut fruit while talking to Sansa Stark. In chapter 72, after Joffrey's death at royal wedding, Cersei and Jaime discuss the assassination attempt on Bran. Jaime concludes that Joffrey tried to have the crippled Bran killed as a misguided attempt to impress Robert. And for the final time, in chapter 77, when Jaime frees Tyrion from the Red Keep's dungeon, the brothers agree that Joffrey had been responsible for the assassination of Bran. It's unknown what has become of the dagger afterwards, but judging by the clues, the dagger is still in the possession of Lord Baelish, and we can have a strong guess that it was Joffrey who sent the catspaw. And the only question that remains in my head is what was Joffrey's motivation? Because when Bran fell, the only people who wanted him dead were Jaime and Cersei. Okay, if you have any theory on that, feel free to share it with me, and thank you so much for watching this video. May the Lord of Light protect you all.